Are we on? All right. Let's we're going to start class with a couple of things. If I could get everybody's attention just for a second. We'll get started when Greg gets in here. Come on. We're going to, let me give you an announcement, a reminder, and then we're going to have a prayer, and then we'll get started with class. Those of you that signed up to help next Sunday with soup. So if you're bringing soup, this is for you. You ready? If you would please bring it to the kitchen back door before church around 9 or 9:15, and will you label your soup with your name and the type of soup, and then you can pick it up in the kitchen on your way home. So did y'all get that? Bring it to the kitchen, 9:15, label it. The funny thing, you could just make up the wrong kind of soup and put the different label. No, don't do that. Put the type of soup and your name, and then you can pick it up at the kitchen before going home. All right. Second, I'll do a confession, and I guess this means I'm getting old. I walked in today and I saw the chairs were not fixed, and I almost passed out because I just forgot. Okay, confess. So we're gonna have Jody come up and lead a prayer for me. I think it's the first time I've done that, like 18 years. I got busy Friday. I was like, I'll come back out here Saturday. And then, if your kid decides to get a house and it needs to be painted from top to bottom, and they don't want to pay anybody to paint the house, so who do you think winds up having to paint? I probably have paint. So I painted all day yesterday and forgot about your chairs. I'm sorry. So really what I'm trying to say is it's Riley's fault that your chairs are not fixed, all right? So when you see him, just kick him or something, all right? All right, on a serious note, Rod Stevenson kind of had a little bit of an incident in the Rock first service. I want to say fell out, just to use a word, and our doctors tended to him. If you saw the ambulance in the parking lot, that's what that's about. They're taking him to the hospital to check him out. He's had some history of some heart issues over the last several years. We don't know that that's what it is. It could be a blood pressure drop, but what we want to do for sure is pray for him, okay? The ambulance is taking him over there now, and they're going to check him out and see what's going on. So let's start class with a prayer for Rod, and then we'll dig into Luke 15, okay? Father, we want to stop right now, and this class wants to lift up Rod Stevenson to you. We want to pray for his health. We want to pray for whatever's going on with him, that you'll put your hand on him, that he'll be peaceful and restful. They'll get him over there and kind of figure out what's going on and get him what he needs, and pray for Gail as well, as she's there with him and some other family members. And we love him and them and their family and what all they've meant to the Cross Point family over many, many years. And we just ask you again just to be with him and give him some strength. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, thank you for that. And if we have if we get any updates, we'll let you know what's going on with that. So if you don't care, if you've got a Bible or a phone app with you, your tablet, go to Luke chapter 15. Luke 15. We'll be there all day today. We're wrapping up a series that we've been doing for several weeks. Next week we won't have class. No class next week. Remember, 9:30, everybody in the Rock. How early are you going to get here to get your usual seat? Because there's one service, right? Sean, how early are you going to get here? 8:30? Okay. So you got to get here before 8:30 if you want to beat Sean Purrier to his spot. There's no way you're going to get here at 8:30. Really? You're missing the combined service? Jody, could you come up and also lead a prayer for Sean? I'm just kidding. Combined service, 9:30. Hadn't done that in a long time, probably since COVID, I guess. Man, this class, this whole thing started with a picture. All right? A picture that I saw on my phone one night waiting to go pick Gina up at the airport in Orlando. Isn't that crazy? Like, that's how class came about. But here's the thing that I've learned after almost 19 years of teaching this class is I pray, like I'm praying now, what's next? what's next? What's going to be for October 15th? What are we going to do? Because we got to have a class, you know. What are we going to study? What is it? A book? Is it a book of the Bible? Is it? And that picture just grabbed me of that figure that looks like Jesus going through the woods, chasing after a muddy, lost sheep. And then as I'm driving to the airport to pick her up, and I had to circle the airport for 35 minutes, and then I'm driving the 11 hours home, I'm thinking, that's the class. That's the class. I thought, well, how am I going to do a class on a picture? And so we talked about that picture for the first week. That's all we did. It's talked about how it makes us feel. It's a picture that was created by Kevin, C-A-R-D-E-N, Carden, and it got me to thinking about the verse in Isaiah, we all like sheep have gone astray. That picture represents every one of us. And I want to make sure, if you don't, just make sure you hear, that picture represents every one of us. It's not, well, it's just me. I'm the one with the problems and nobody else has any problems. I feel so bad. Every one of us, at one point or another, we felt like that little lamb in that picture that we looked at that first week. And I just want you to think about that. We've talked about pits with Joseph, but we're the lamb in the woods. And we asked this question the second week, does one matter? And we moved into this study. If you'll look at Luke 15 that you've got there with you, verse 1, this is where it starts. Jesus tells three stories, but it's because of these verses. Verse 1 and 2, he gets challenged. Tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and the teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. And so Jesus begins to tell some stories. One about a lost sheep, one about a lost coin, and then today we're going to talk about the lost son. All throughout this 3 or 4 week series, we've said this: when something important is lost, then nothing else matters. Right? When something important is lost, then nothing else matters. You go look. You don't say, well, I'm going to take time out maybe tomorrow about 3 o'clock. I'll go look for it. No, you stop. You go. And we talked about the sheep in week 2, and we talked about how that shepherd would get to that herd, that flock of sheep, and be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, 10, and he realizes one's gone. And you know, there's almost 500, a little over 500 verses in the Bible about the shepherd-sheep relationship. So I would say that's probably an important relationship, isn't it? If there's 500 verses about it in the Bible. And we said when that shepherd found that dirty, muddy, tired, lost sheep in the woods, Jesus tells this story. We said, you know what? He didn't shame it. He didn't go, what are you doing out here in the woods? Get back over here to the flock. Why didn't you tell me you were lost? He knows he's lost because he's the shepherd. And he picks him up and he carries him back joyfully. I've got him. Man, I almost lost him. And I'm going to get him back to the flock. That's the picture that we see. And then Jesus says, there's joy in heaven over one sinner's rescue life than over 99 good people in no need of rescue. Then he tells another story about some coins, and we passed out bags of coins last week, and everybody got one. And we talked about, we wanted to make sure everybody understood that the coin to this lady was very important. And not just from the monetary value, supposedly was about a day's wage. It was sentimental because it probably was part of a 10-coin thing that she would wear around her neck, like maybe how we would see a wedding ring today. So it would be extremely distressful. And so she's sweeping and cleaning and looking, and she's calling people. It says she will light a lamp in verse 8. In Luke 15, if you've got your passage there, she'll light a lamp, she'll sweep the house, she'll look carefully for the coin until she finds it. And when she finds it, she's calling friends and neighbors, and she's posting it on Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat, and she's so excited. I've got the coin. And just like the other said, when there's joy in heaven over the one sinner, now it says there's joy in the presence of the angels of God when one sinner changes his heart and life. I pointed that out last week at the end of class to think about what the angels do daily, 24/7 for all eternity, is they're praising God, and they're also excited when this one sinner repents. Just to picture that, if you could, it's like they're praising God, and there's a sinner, look, one came back. And they're having a party about that too. Oh, man, these stories are crazy. So we got to go to the new story, all right, the last story. We got a sheep, we got a coin, now we got a son. And I don't know, is the prodigal son maybe the most famous of the three? I don't know. I feel like I've heard a lot about this kid from preachers over the years. But let's talk about the context, okay? Because, again, Jesus is telling a story in response to how he's been challenged from hanging out with sinners. So you got to think, what is the audience hearing, all right? They knew how important a sheep was to a shepherd. And we said that the Pharisees and religious leaders hearing this, they would have known it, but they weren't the ones getting dirty with the sheep. They probably hired that out. They didn't have time to get with the lost. And with the coin, they knew the monetary value. They knew the tradition of the coins. They knew the potential embarrassment if the coin was lost. And so now Jesus starts talking about a story that I think hits all of them. So look at Luke 15, verse 11, okay? Luke 15, verse 11. Here we go. To illustrate the point further, Jesus told them this story. A man had 2 sons. So we've gone from 100 sheep to 10 coins to 2 boys. Did my math teachers find anything, any homework, anything, any significance for these numbers and ratios and anybody? Anyone? Everyone is important. Oh, Robin, that's right. Everybody's important, and that's what we're going to keep talking about here. So, the younger son tells his father, again, remember, Jesus is telling a story to an audience. The boy says, I want my share of your estate now before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. Again, he's trying to make a point to this group that the lost, the sinners, the unclean, everybody matters. So again, I want you to think about this background. All right, I did a little looking in my New Living Translation study Bible. The younger son's share of the estate would have been a third. Okay, he gets a third. The older son would have gotten 2/3. This is in Deuteronomy 21 that we're told this. That's just the tradition for the Jews. In most cases, this inheritance happens when the father passes. All right, father passes away, the estate's divided that way between the sons. Every now and then it says that sometimes fathers would choose to retire and divide the estate prior to his death. Okay? That's just what happened. That's just Deuteronomy, Jewish custom. I mean, that's the way it would happen. Now, Jesus comes in with a crazy curveball in his story, because in his story, the son initiates the division of the estate. Y'all see this now, what's happening? Okay. And so this, therefore, begins the negativity that Jesus is kind of throwing on this boy to his audience. Because what they would have thought was, what? The youngest son is asking for the division of the estate to happen. Who does he think he is? How arrogant. It would be an arrogance. It would be a social whatever. You wouldn't do that. You just wouldn't do it. And so they would be like, what's Jesus talking about? This boy can't ask for the estate. Who does he think he is? So the audience, the number one thing here already happening, the audience would have thought the kid was arrogant for asking. All right, you got that? Already, that's enough. See, we can stop, and the audience is already thinking this kid's messed up. But Jesus goes on. Look at verse 13. A few days later, this younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all his money in wild living. He's arrogant, and he's a party animal. Verse 14, about the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. Man, we are really building a case here for how bad this kid is, okay? So he wastes all of his inheritance in wild living. We're not doing the microphones today. We're not reading, but could somebody help me with some other translations on verse 13 about, it says he moved to a distant land and there he wasted all of his money in wild living. What else you got there? Where did he move to and what did he waste his money on? Just distant country, squandered his wealth in wild living. What else we got? Any other translation, something different? Foolish living. Reckless living. What translation says, does one of them say the far country? Am I making that up? Is that King James? It's stuck in my head. Loose living. I want to say it's the King James that said far country, right? Because that's like when we're kids. I'm 54, so when I was a kid, I memorized everything to King James, but then now we don't anymore. Yeah, far country. He wastes all of his inheritance. So he moves off. Are y'all getting the picture? Can you picture a young boy with a third of maybe a wealthy person? His father probably had some stuff. He got a third of it. He goes off. He's reckless. He's reckless. He's got a house and he's expecting his dad to paint it. Oh, wait, that's me. That's not the story. I'm having like bad dreams up here. He wastes his inheritance in wild living. Okay, now guys, listen, this is the part that I'm telling you we cannot understand, we cannot appreciate it, because we're going to have bacon every morning for breakfast. He goes to work for a farmer helping with the pigs. The audience would have gasped out loud. What? No, okay, whatever. I get wanting money and I get wasting it, but nobody messes with the pigs, because Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14, the law of Moses tells us pigs are unclean. You can't be around them. You can't eat them. You can't use them for sacrifice. A Jew feeding pigs. I don't know. What's the modern? You can't do it. And then he was so hungry he was willing to eat their food. And I know some of you are thinking that's just gross anyway, right? Eating pig. Sarah, I can tell look on your face. You're thinking that's gross, eating that pig food. But he's a young Jewish boy. He's feeding pigs, and he wants to eat their food. The audience, I was trying to pull up a video on my phone. I couldn't find. It would have been like when we watched that show Fear Factor. Y'all used to watch that? Remember? And they make somebody eat some kind of larva of some kind of worm or something. Y'all remember that show? And they sometimes do it on Survivor. They bring out a tray and they take the top off, and it's something gross, and everybody's going. That's what was happening here. He He's touched pigs. He's been around pigs. He's willing to eat. All right, so let's review. All right, let's get our boy. I want you to picture him. He's arrogant. He asks for his inheritance early. He sins with his partying and wild living. He's unclean from pigs and pig's food. And so this audience that Jesus is talking to here in Luke 15, the Pharisees and religious leaders, I mean, this kid is the worst of the worst. Right? I mean, Jesus hit them with 4 or 5 different things to make them think, my goodness, how much worse, what kind of horrible example can he give? I begin to think, because they were saying that Jesus would eat with sinners, maybe one of them joked with each other and said, Jesus, he's probably going to take this kid to lunch. Because that's what they think about Jesus. So that's our boy. So let's read a little more. Look at Luke 15, sorry. Oh, look at Luke 15, verse 17. When he finally came to his senses. I think I've heard an entire sermon preached on just that phrase right there. He said to himself, at home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I'm dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant. What do you think the Pharisees and religious leaders are thinking at this point when they hear that? Anybody want to throw something out? I mean, he came to his senses, huh?
I wouldn't have him back.
Yeah. He came to his senses, and it sounds like he's sorry, but not in my house. He's not stepping foot on my property. I mean, wouldn't it? Is that what they'd probably be thinking? First of all, because what he's done, they would see him as lost, and they would see him as spiritually and physically unclean. And remember what we said about the Pharisees in our first story is they're fanatical about being clean, how they washed their hands when they ate and how they cleaned their pots, but then they saw themselves, they didn't see themselves as sinners. They saw themselves as keepers of the law of Moses, and we keep it all, however many hundreds of them there are, and you better not get around me if you're a sinner. No way they're going to have anything to do with this kid. And so they're thinking, well, that's how this story's got to end, right? Maybe there's one over here with a little bit of a heart thinking, well, he's his son. It is his son's. Maybe he lets him come on and work as a servant. He could be a servant, right? But he can't go back into the full grace and worthiness of being a son to this father. So here's the thing we got to stop and talk about just for a second. Because I've been this boy. Have you? You've messed up. And I guess I was hoping more of you would shake your head than that, but thank you. Thank you, Kyle, for being the only one that's like me. Have you felt like the religious leaders, the Pharisees, the church crowd was looking down on you? Oh, you don't have to shake your head. But I bet we all have at some point in our life, hadn't we? And not just sin, there's that proverbial, I don't really fit in the box that everybody thinks I'm supposed to fit in, or how I'm supposed to look, or how I'm supposed to act. Maybe you feel like you've messed up. Listen, guys, these stories are so important to us in 2023. I just made just a couple of quick notes. If you have had marriage trouble, these stories are for you, because I don't want you to forget the picture. Jesus is running to help you, and you're not alone. See, a lot of times we think, oh, nobody else is having trouble, and it's just us, and everybody else's marriage is perfect, and that's what we want to think, and then we don't want to be around church people because we feel judged. And Jesus is saying, I'm after all the lost sheep. You're not the only one. I'm coming. I'm coming after you. And if your kids, and I don't know what's going on. I know what's going on with some of your families. I know what's going on. I tell y'all about my family more than I should. But if your kids are off in the far country, if they've gone off somewhere, I know you haven't forgotten them. And you need to make sure you remember Jesus hasn't either. It's the picture. If they're that dirty, muddy, lost sheep, he's still looking for them. If you're having health issues, you're not lost in the woods by yourself. If you're struggling with addiction, you're not over in the corner like that coin that we talked about that just rolled kind of off and the lady didn't know where it was. Are you getting it? Don't look around your row and don't talk, well, Mark's talking about Tim. No, I'm talking about all of us. Can we say that? Aren't we all at one point, have we been this boy? Could y'all please, I won't look at you. Can everybody do this? Haven't we been the boy? But no, Mark, I didn't feed pigs. I'm not talking about literally the boy. But you've been in the far country. And you're like, oh man, if I could just go back and be a servant, I'll take it. I'll just be a servant if God will give it to me. These stories are important because we all, like sheep, have gone astray. And it's important to remember because sometimes we fall into the other side. We fall into the Pharisee side, the religious leader trap, and we begin to think, well, we're better than somebody else. Well, at least I didn't have an affair, or at least I didn't, or at least my kids did this, not like their kids. No, don't do that. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. We need to help each other. Just because maybe you didn't struggle with this and you didn't struggle with that, you're struggling with something. Okay? We're the coin. We're the sheep. We're the boy. Oh, yes, Lou, we could.
Now maybe we aren't. Maybe we have been, but now we aren't.
But you can go back.
But something can trip us up. Can happen.
Yeah. And I think about people that, and just what you're saying, that have been, you've been in the far country. Maybe you could help somebody else that's struggling with that. Rather than judge them, it's like, I've been there. I know that. I've had this struggle. Please let me help you. Rather than, well, can't believe they're over there in the far country. And we go back to refill our Coke at Culver's, and we talk about, oh no, let's help them if they're in the far country. So, the son comes to his senses. We've been there, we've done that. I think a lot of us have. We'll go home. I don't know why I wrote there's no place like home out beside that, because I know that's just cliche, but there's really not, right? Home, whether that's parents or grandparents or an aunt or an uncle or a church family, we want to feel loved and we want to feel like there's a place that we're accepted. That's home. That needs to be here. Not just this class or this church, this family, it needs to feel like home. We're going to mess up. And your family, I tell you, my family, we've had all kind of stuff going in my family the last 54 years with relationships and people and things and places, and kids didn't do what parents thought they should do, and uncles and aunts didn't do it. Can anybody else say you've had stuff go on in your family and you're like, oh my word, I hope nobody finds out about that? Guess what? You're not alone. There needs to be no judgment. we need to all wrap our arms around each other and say, I get it. I'm sorry. What can I do to help?
Well, Scripture doesn't say if we struggle, it says when we struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to happen. And you know, if Tim says, hey, you want to go to Big Man's Barbecue and get a salad? Sometimes you go. And you just talk. And there's no judgment. And you just talk about stuff. We all need a place where we feel like home. And that's what happened here. This boy is, I imagine he is remembering being a child. And that was the safe place. And he left it. So he goes home and he confesses all of his stuff. And I think it is admirable. He confesses his stuff. There's repentance. And he is prepared to face the consequences. He is not the boy that said, hey, go on and give me a third of your wealth. He is going to crawl back and say, I'll take whatever, man. Put me out in the barn shoveling up the horse stuff. I'll do it. Just take me back. So look at Luke 15, verse 20. So he returned home to the father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. Now, let's stop a second. What about the arrogance, the wild living, and the pigs? Remember? But it says the father embraced him and kissed him. Maybe he didn't know about the pigs yet. Reckon? His son said to him, Father, I've sinned against both heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. And probably somebody in the audience from the religious leaders and the teachers and the people that don't care about the sinners said, amen to that. Yeah, that's a good way to end that story, Jesus. He's no longer worthy to be called your son. But, verse 22, look. Oh, man, Jesus is, he is like reaching. This is like a curveball like nobody's seen. It's Randy Johnson, 99 miles an hour, left-handed, and you're a left-handed batter, and you can't do nothing with it. That's a baseball reference that probably half of you didn't get. But here it comes. But his father said to the servants, quick, go get the finest robe in the house and put him on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf we've been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast. Remember, every one of these three stories ends with a party. For this son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found. So the party began. All right, I'm going to say some things here. Let's see if I can get through it. How many times a day did the dad look on the horizon? Parents, remember I told y'all a story about Riley getting lost in Disney World 2 or 3 weeks ago. I'm not going to go back and retell it, but that point we made was, I asked you how long would I have, we found him in 10 minutes, but I said, how long would I have looked? And a bunch of you said, well, till you found him. An hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 3 days, whatever it took. We'd have flown family in if we'd have needed to, and we'd have started looking. We'd have scoured the city. We wouldn't have, how many times a day did the dad look? What do you think? I think he looked a lot. I thought, man, it's today. I wonder if he's going to come back. Because why? Why is he looking? Yeah. Go ahead.
All these things, shoes, coat, ring, and robe, probably reserved for some special case,
Yeah.
not for this particular.
Yeah. They were fattening that calf for something, but it might not have been this. But he comes home, and so I ask you to think, would you stop looking? See, the boy would have been written off As soon as the religious leaders in this story heard the word pig, he's off. He's written off. Here's the reminders, and we're going to be done. We got 3 minutes. But the Father, see, this story is about a father, but let me go ahead and change it. Y'all know what the Father is. It's our Father. Our Father, He doesn't give up on us. So, Jesus is being accused of eating with notorious sinners, and He's telling this story, and I don't know if anybody got it that was listening to this, but He's saying, you know what, guys, we don't need to give up on these folks. God's not going to give up on them. I'm not going to give up on them. I'm going to keep looking. In fact, you know what? In the story of the sheep and in our picture that started all this, not only was He going to keep looking on the horizon, He was going to run. So that's where this all started, was a picture. Which leads us to Luke 15, which led us to tax collectors and notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. Guess what, guys? What are we? We're notorious sinners. We are, and because of Jesus, because of what He did for us, that's why we're saved. It made the Pharisees mad. It made the teachers of the law complain. And Jesus is eating with them, so Jesus tells them about a sheep, about a coin, and about a son. And we're going to wrap it up with 3 things. Each story here is to make a point that the lost matters to Jesus. Everybody, like Robin said, matters to Jesus. Who are you? Are you one of the ones? That was where you go like this. Yeah, we're one of the ones. So guess what? You matter to Jesus. And I'm telling you guys, I promise you, I don't know what you've got going on, and maybe it's something that you're not willing to tell anybody about, and that's okay. But I can promise you this, we're like the picture where this all started. There is absolutely nothing He will not do to come find you. Nothing. But Mark, you don't know what I've touched pigs. Whatever the 2023 version of that is, guess what? Jesus will still come look for you. There's our story. Luke 15 and a photograph. All right? Let's pray. God, we're so thankful again that we know we're the sheep and we're coins and we're the son and we've been lost. And you keep looking for us, and you love us, and you're looking out for us. Right now, there's probably somebody in class right now that thinks that they've done something so bad that you're not going to look for them. Please put on their heart, God, today to know that you still want to connect with them. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for offering us grace and mercy. Help us not to feel like we're lost in the far country. Help us to encourage each other and not judge each other.